sitting in front of you is to my right is Shaykh Amin Kholwadia, a senior scholar of the Western world. And you guys should consider yourself very blessed and very lucky to have him sitting in front of you. For there are many people who understand and know who the Shaykh is. They would do a lot and give up a lot to be in his presence to where you guys are right now. So you guys should say Alhamdulillah and thank Allah. And the way to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is by listening attentively, taking notes, mental notes, as well as physical written notes, and have sincerity, listen with the ear of your heart, and have the intention that you will practice on what will be said, and you will also propagate what will be said, inshallah. So without further ado, I request all the brothers to continue following upstairs, and the sisters also, please get ready and settled. And inshallah, with that, I will pass on the mic to Shaykh Amin.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على سيدنا ونبينا محمد. الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى. خصوصا على سيد الانبياء محمد وعلى اله واصحابه الاتقياء. اما بعد. Alhamdulillah, you just heard a very beautiful explanation of who our ulama are, how our chain and sanad goes back through the legendary scholars to Shah Abdulaziz Shah Walillah, then all the way to Imam Bukhari and all the other scholars who came before him, to the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, to the Sahaba. This chain is necessary, this sanad is necessary to part of deen, as you will learn later on. Al-Islam in the deen, being able to trace your chain and your sanad back to the Prophet ﷺ is part of deen. That is an Islamic thing to do. Because in our tradition, we are linked not by books, but we are linked by people, by human beings. Our knowledge comes from human beings, primarily. Then from books at the secondary level. When people are born, they learn primarily from their parents, their siblings, their grandparents, their cousins, their aunts, their uncles, the community around them. No baby is born with the ability to read and write. The babies are born with the abilities to see, to listen, and then to process, and then to mimic and copy, and then to repeat, retain and memorize. Everybody's born with this mantra. So we see that in our tradition, we follow the pattern of what we call Atba'u Qasim, the oral tradition, that we listen and then we speak. Books came later in Islam. The Sahaba didn't have any books. They had the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. The Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is a Nabi al-Ummi. What does a Nabi al-Ummi mean? The Nabi who does not read or write. Understand? How do you learn from someone who doesn't know how to read and write? You can see. by listening. You must think of this very carefully, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent the last Nabi without the ability to read or write, but he became the greatest teacher of all time. He produced the greatest academic, intellectual civilization of all time. So the Prophet ﷺ would speak, the Prophet ﷺ would practice, the Sahaba would listen, and the Sahaba would copy. Then the Sahaba in turn, what is the only book that they officially wrote down? Quran. The only book the Sahaba wrote officially is the Quran. At the time of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, as you know, you heard the name of the Sahabi, Zayd bin Thabit radiallahu anhu. Abu Bakr and Umar commissioned Zayd bin Thabit to document the Quran. And he did this by listening to the eyewitnesses. Each verse had two eyewitnesses. Then they wrote it. Then during the time of Uthman radiallahu anhu, he commissioned Zayd bin Thabit again to revise, to write the Quran in the dialect of the Quraysh. That was the second official writing. But the Sahaba, this is the only official book and document they had. And even that, not every Sahabi had a copy of the Quran because there was no paper. Paper was very scarce. So for the first 50 years, 100 years, you can see that Muslims did not rely on books to learn. What did they rely upon? Company of the Shaykh. Learning from the Shaykh orally, by listening, by memorizing, by repeating, by processing, by understanding. And within this tradition, you heard Mufti Sahib, mashallah, say that Umar radiallahu anhu established how many halaqat? How many did he say? You were listening. In this oral tradition, you established almost 5,000 schools where there were no books. Can you think of this today? Anywhere in the world that you can say we have 5,000 schools, but we don't have books? People say, you're crazy. You have a school, no book, no paper, no pen, but you have 5,000. And in Basra alone, how many Hafaz were there? 10,000. How can that be? It is because of the barakah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made him a Nabi al-Ummi. The Ummi Nabi will produce the greatest academic civilization in human history. Afterwards, later on in the 2nd century, then you had some books come up, more like Imam Malik, you heard. And then other scholars started writing books in fiqh and in hadith, and then collecting books of other sciences also. Anyway, this is just to give you the background to understanding that we as Muslims don't always rely on the conventional means by which others learn. We don't copy other methodologies of learning. We have our own unique, original method of learning the deen. This is about learning the deen, right? I'm not talking about learning physics or biology or engineering or medicine or astronomy. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about learning the deen. Learning the deen comes from being able to access and process knowledge from other human beings who know, and who know how to transmit, and who know how to teach. This is how we became who we became as a civilization, a community of scholars and of knowledge. So now the question in front of me is, what is scholarship? Who is a scholar? How do we define an alim? So, we say this is a question of who is an alim of deen, not an alim of physics or medicine. Is that clear? Does that make sense? We're here to discuss who is an alim of deen. What is deen? Islam. So who is an alim of Islam? That's the question. It's very simple. It's not complicated. Allah, the Prophet ﷺ said, "Ad-deenu yusrun." Deen is easy. So we don't need to complicate deen. It's very simple. You may gauge and understand how you learn deen in a very similar way to how you learn other sciences. Now, who here wants to become a doctor one day? Or an engineer? Or a pharmacist? Or an IT guy? Who here wants to do something in life? Everybody. In this country, when you become, let's say, an accountant, my brother is an accountant. There he is. So, when you become an accountant, when you become a lawyer, when you become a doctor, that is how you want to understand when and how you become an alim. When you become a school teacher, is it when you finish high school? Or when you go to college and have a degree in education, or is there something else afterwards also? I don't know what New Jersey has. My guess must be very similar to the other states when you are certified and you go through the process of certification. So now the first question, for instance, if you want to become a lawyer, how many years does it take for you to become a lawyer, to pass your bar exam? How many? From when? After high school. First you do your undergrad and then you do your JD, which is about 3 years, then maybe another year. Then it's 7, 8 years. So post high school, you need how many years? At least 7. 7 years to become someone who knows enough law to become what? A JD, a lawyer. 7 years. 7 years plus what? How many years in high school? 4. And how many years before that? 12 years of schooling. And then 7 years of post-high school learning. How many years is that? 19 years. Let's say 20 years. So you need 20 years of schooling to become a lawyer in this country. Does that make sense? Am I speaking the truth? If you don't want to become a lawyer and you want to become a school teacher, how many years is that? 4 years of undergrad, 1 or 2 more years later on. That's 6 years. Plus your 12 years on high school and pre-high school. Even that's 18 years. So, when you are schooling for 18 years, you can teach others what they need to know at the elementary level, the middle school level, and the high school level. And perhaps later on, you go further and you have another degree, a master's, so that you can teach at the bachelor's level, the undergrad level. So when people ask, how long does it take to become an alim of deen? How long do you think? 1 year? You do a deen intensive somewhere. You do a deen intensive somewhere. Now I know the deen. Does that work? It does for some people. So I'll study Arabic in 1 year. After 1 year, I will know how to read the Quran. Does that work? It works for many people. No, I'll be here for 2 years or 3 years. Does that work? No. What I'm saying, and I'm not scaring you, I'm telling you what it takes to be an alim of American law, 18 years, right? And you're saying that you want to be an alim of Islamic law in 4 years, or 5 years, or 7 years. There's no justice. That equation is wrong. Meaning you'd have to be superhuman to say that you can become an alim of Islamic law, meaning fiqh and ijtihad, in 4 years or 5 years, and that's all we need. Or I want to become an alim of the Quran and be able to do tafsir in 1 year or in 2 years. That is wrong. So we give so much credence and importance to how we study law in this country, how we study medicine in this country, how we study other sciences in this country, and we say it's okay to study 15 years and 18 years so that we may become somewhat familiar. And after you become a JD and MD or whatever else, you need training. You need to become an intern. You need to become an apprentice. You need to become a resident. Then you go through your residency and all of that. So you remain junior for so many years before you are even considered to be a master in your field. Right? This is the way human beings work. So we must come back to this model, and the way we are in this country or in any other country which has a university process, that we must appreciate it takes much more than 4 years or 5 years or 7 years to become an alim of deen. Unless we appreciate this, we will not appreciate who is an alim. You understand? Again, I'm not scaring you. We have institutions here. Maulana Muftisa was from IE, next door to us, where I am in Dar Qasim. And here you have Dar Hidayah. And you have so many other institutions that will help you learn the preliminary subjects, the necessary tools by which you will be able to become an alim later on in life. So, when you want to study now American law or New Jersey law, then you need the tools. What are those tools? You speak the language, you read the language, you understand the language, and you write the language. And that comes with your learning in high school or pre-high school, that you learn the language of English or whichever language the law is written in. And you do Islamic, you do social studies, and you do other studies in your high school, and then you go to college, and you have a major, and you have a minor, and then later on you focus on what it is you want to do. Likewise, with Islamic studies, you must know, first of all, that there are tools. What's the language of Islamic studies? Arabic. So you need to know Arabic. You cannot become an alim of deen when you don't know what? Arabic. Which Arabic? The classical Arabic. The Arabic of the Quran and Sunnah, not modern Arabic. Modern Arabic is spoken Arabic, it's a different language from the classical Arabic of the Quran and Sunnah. Different rules, not of grammar, but different rules of composition, different rules of comprehension, different rules of how you bring things together in the sentence and what words mean and how they use those words in that time, and how the Prophet used words of the Quran and Sunnah, the way he used them so that you have a context. Right? This is one thing. So you need to be an expert or have a good command over the Arabic language if you're going to study the Quran and Sunnah. Does this make sense? So somebody who doesn't know Arabic, will he ever be an alim of deen? No. Why? He doesn't have the tool by which he's going to study the ilm and the knowledge of deen. When somebody has that level of Arabic competence, which may take you 3 years in a madrasa, 4 years, maybe 5 years, depending on the curriculum and your courses, then you can say, now I'm able to read the Quran, I'm able to read the Hadith, and I'm able now to start studying what the Quran and Hadith are saying. And this is a gift. This is what? This is a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made learning the Arabic language easy. وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرَ الْقُرْآنَ لِلذِّكْرِ. He has made the recitation of Quran easy. Meaning that learning the language of the Quran is easy, is not difficult. It is complicated and it is not superficial, it is sophisticated. But it's easy. If you put the time and effort in 3 years, in 4 years, you can understand how the early ulama wrote and what they understood. If you have supervised studies through your teacher time, this is full time, in part time. I mean, you're studying 6, 7 hours a day, and you have the teachers who can train you to learn that language, the language of the Sunnah. Then you can do it. That's what it takes. When you read the stories of the Sahaba, like Abdullah ibn Abbas, radiallahu anhuma, say his name. Where was he based? Ibn Abbas, where was he based? Malana, he didn't give them a quiz. In Makkah. Abdullah ibn Abbas was based in Makkah. He was known for his ability to comment on the Quran. He's known as Hibr al-Ummah, one of the greatest commentators of the Quran is Abdullah ibn Abbas. Do you think he knew Arabic? What do you think? Is it safe to guess to say that Abdullah ibn Abbas is Arabic? Phenomenal, wonderful knowledge of Arabic. But during his time after teaching in the evening, before he would rest, he would tell his students how to be Diwan al-Shu'ara. Bring me the other writings of the Jahiliyyah poets. Beginning, you are Mufassir of the Quran, you know Arabic, and now you want to read some of the poets that people before you wrote. Why is that? So he would say, perhaps I may find in their poetry a word or 2 words that will help me understand the Quran better. Right. Who is this? Ulama, the greatest Mufassir of the Sahaba. And he will say, I want to continue learning. And you told them, meaning learning the language continues for a very, very long time. You're always learning. You're always learning. You know that I know enough Arabic to learn the Quran, to read the Quran. It doesn't work that way. It works in a different way. That's the talab. Your seeking of knowledge now must continue until you die. Anyway, that is for the Arabic. With the Arabic then, you have now 4 core content subjects. If you want to study law, you have some core content subjects. Of course, it's a mistake. If you want to study Islamic studies, which is what you're trying to do here, and understand who is an alim of deen, you must have 4 core subjects that you study. And you know all 4 of them. What are they? What's the first one? Fiqh. You all come back to it. Fiqh is one of them. Very good. So your core subject is, in your mind, fiqh. How do you study fiqh? Well, you want to, you know the Arabic now, and you have a book. How are you going to study fiqh? Like a book of Quduri, very simple book, a primer. How do you study that? So you know your Arabic, and you have a teacher, and you're going to study Quduri. So along with the study of fiqh, you need to study usul al-fiqh. Is that right? The rules of fiqh, the principles of jurisprudence, What is the theory of this word and this word? How do you look at this word in the Quran and Sunnah? And how you look at this word in the Quran and Sunnah? What does this construct mean? What does this mean? It's called the usul. You need to study that also. So for 2, 3, 4 years in your core content, not only will you be studying the rules, the ahkam, the do's and don'ts, that this is right, this is wrong, this is halal, this is makruh, this is mustahab, kada wa kada, and along with that you'll be studying other rules of how to determine all of these rules. The rules behind the rules. That's called usul al-fiqh. That's part of your core content. The second one, which is the first one, is the Quran. The core content study is what? The Quran. That you will study the Quran, meaning you will translate the Quran in front of the teacher. And your first year, that's what you do, tarjuma. And you make sure you do not mistranslate an ayah of the Quran or word of the Quran. And that is determined by what you know Islam is, by your aqidah. When you read a translation of the Quran into English or into Urdu or any other language, what is the most important rule before you say this translation is good or bad? What is that rule? If a non-Muslim translates the Quran because he or she knows Arabic, will you accept that translation? No. Why? You would misrepresent an ayah. But he knows Arabic. So is knowing Arabic enough to understand the Quran or translate it? No. Meaning that you must know your aqidah. You must know your theology. You must know your basic core value beliefs. If there is a Qadiani, who's a Qadiani? Anyone here not know who Qadiani is? Who's a Qadiani? Qadiani is a group that says that Ghulam Muhammad Qadiani is a Nabi. They are condemned kafirs, universally. Every Muslim scholar in the world says Qadiani is a what? Non-Muslim. But do you know who has the best translation of the Quran in English? The Qadiani. Do you know who promotes the translation of the Quran the most? The Qadiani. But do you think that they don't know Arabic? They know. So what's wrong? What's wrong is their aqidah. And you say it's only one portion of the aqidah. They don't believe Muhammad is the last Nabi. They believe this person here is also a Nabi or false, whatever they call it. And when people who go to college and to other academic circles, they say this Qadiani translation is superb, it's wonderful. And they read it, and then that one or two ayah where that poison is injected, now they become by default not Muslims but Qadiani. So what is the core content that you must have if you want to be an alim of deen? You must know the translation of the Quran verse for verse. And what is a prerequisite for that? That your aqidah is correct. The aqidah. You study the Quran and you study aqidah. What is aqidah? It is theology. It is theism. It is how to understand Allah. It is what to believe in, what not to believe in. That's also a 2-year course, a 3-year course, and sometimes it's a 4-year course, and at Darul we have it all the way to master's level also. Many courses in your theology. Which subject now in Western academia is the most studied in Islamic studies? Theology. If you go to Western universities, the theology department and the Islamic studies department will make you focus on Islamic theology, Islamic aqidah. Why am I saying this? Because when you study deen in this country and you go into mainstream, people will ask you, what do you say about this ayah, which talks about Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam this way? And what do you say about this ayah, which talks about Allah this way? And what do you say about this ayah, which talks about the Day of Judgment and seeing Allah on the Day of Judgment? What do you say? You understand? Theology and aqidah. Aqidah is not something that you do in a halaqah, not the halaqah of Umar, the halaqah here, the US, half an hour after some salat. And you say, let's have a halaqah and let's study aqidah. 1, 2, 3, no. It's very organized. It's very disciplined. It's a school. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 levels. Then you know this is how you study aqidah. If you want to be an alim of deen, if you want to be an alim of deen, meaning just as the JD and the MD has years of schooling before they can say they know the law or they know medicine. Likewise, you need years of schooling in theology and aqidah before you can say, I know Islamic theology. It does not come overnight or in a weekly retreat or in a summer camp or somebody delivers a great khutbah and now all of a sudden you know Islamic aqidah. It's much more sophisticated. It requires a lot of effort. That's the point I'm trying to make. That the effort that you need in order to become an alim of deen is just as much as the effort as you require in order to be an alim of other science, other disciplines. Don't make that mistake and assume that you can get away with mediocre studies in Islamic studies. It doesn't work that way. Our scholars of the past, Maulana mentioned these great ulama, Shah Abdul Aziz, the great son of Shah Waliullah. Did you know by the age of 18, he had mastered 18 disciplines? How many? 18. By which age? 18. One for each year. And today you have geniuses who have SAT scores 1600 and you call them geniuses. So they're not geniuses in our book. And that's fine. You can do that standardized testing, 1600. The president will call you to the Oval Office. That's fine. You have an MCAT score, super. You have this score, super, fine. But 18 disciplines by the age of 18, super deep. You understand? From those 18 is Arabic, Sarf al-Nahu, Balagha, Ma'ani, those 4 subjects. He had a mastery from those 18. I'm not talking about other mastery he had in his repertoire, his portfolio. So this is how they became alim of deen, and that's why they produced the students they produced, because their standard and their bar was very high. Why? Because this is knowledge of wahi. This is knowledge of nabuwa. This comes with the nur of the Prophet ﷺ. You do not want to dilute this by saying, let me study 6 months or a year, and now this will be the end of my study. Don't make that mistake. Very common mistake. Everybody seems to be making. I can get away with studying this way now. So now, when you're studying the Quran and you're translating the Quran, you must be able to recognize the aqidah in each ayah. The aqidah in what? In each ayah. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to encourage you. You are young, mashallah, give you long lives. So don't waste your young lives with idle fantasies. I can study you 3 years or 4 years. You have to study 18 years. How long did Abu Hanifa spend with his teacher in fiqh? Who was Abu Hanifa's teacher? You heard the name. Most of mentioned. Hamad. Abu Hanifa's teacher in fiqh is who? Hamad. Great scholar. How many years did Abu Hanifa remain in his company? Anybody know? Yes, 18. The number 18 company. He stayed with him for 18 years. And this is when? This is when he was already an alim of deen. Abu Hanifa was already an alim of deen when he sat in the company of Muhammad. And how long did he stay with him? 18 years. Now you say, what are you going to learn in 18 years? When you're already an alim of deen. That's where the knowledge is. So you continue to continue. It may not be that practical nowadays, but you must understand the depth of their knowledge. This is what I'm trying to bring out. So Abu Hanifa was already an alim of the Quran. He already knew the Arabic of the Quran. He already knew Aqidah because he was debating with every movement that was false in Iraq. Before he studied fiqh, he was debating. He was debating with the atheists. He was debating with the Qadariyah and the Jabariyah. He was debating with the Shias. He was debating with everybody who was not from the Sunnah. And he would go out and debate with people. He was a master debater in theology. Then he came into fiqh, where he stayed for 18 years in the company of his Shaykh. Then he became Abu Hanifa. This is what you must appreciate. So now, Shah Abdul Aziz rahimahullah was a scholar of tremendous repute by the age of 18 and 20, and that's when he started to teach. And then what he produced is what we have in front of you today throughout the world through the Dewandi system of learning and education. So now, first is the Quran. With the Quran you need Aqidah. So these are two core subjects. And the third one will be Hadith. You have Quran, Aqidah, and you have Hadith. So now you must study Hadith. And how long did it take you to study Hadith? Many years. So the first 4 years of your undergrad, and then another 3 years or 2 years of your graduate studies at the master's level, which is called the Dora. Dora Hadith. That takes a long time. Then when you have studied the Quran with Aqidah and the Hadith with the fiqh, then you are an alim of deen, meaning now you have the potential to study Islam. You have the potential to do what? Study Islam. So every madrasa would say, spend 8 years with us and we will give you the tools and the ability by which and with which you will be able to continue to study Islam for the rest of your life. That makes sense? So let's continue. So whenever someone graduates from a madrasa, they are told, you now have permission to study. You don't graduate. In Islam, you don't graduate from knowledge. Why? What is the dua in the Quran about knowledge? Which dua do you make? Rabbi zidni. Does it say, Rabbi kharrijni? My Lord, graduate me. Takharruj and khuruj means that you're finished, you're done. Right? So the modern day word for graduation, takharraja. Takharraja with takalluf. That you are forcing yourself to leave now learning. So you're mutakharrij. You're a graduate. In the classical system, it was Qur Rabbi zidni ilma. My Lord, increase me in knowledge. You don't graduate from learning. You begin learning. In every milestone, at each marhala, at every phase of your life, you begin to study again and again and again. You don't continue. So when we say this person is an alim of deen, We say that he has the tools and the ability by which that if you ask him a question, he can go back and bring an answer for you. When you say this person is a lawyer, what's he going to do other than charge you $400 an hour? Is he going to give you an answer on the spot? No. So when you ask a mufti or an alim of deen, what is the solution to my issue? Sometimes he'll give you a one-word answer. Other times he'll say, let me get back to you. And then people are amazed. He's an alim of deen and he didn't know. And when you go to the lawyer, you go with a $400 check first. Take your time. You don't have to answer me now. We'll come, we'll make an appointment with your secretary, then we'll discuss it in detail. An alim of deen, Shaykh, what's the answer to this? I don't know. What kind of alim are you? The psyche has to change. The philosophy has to change. This is why what I call drive-through Islam. You know, drive-through knowledge? Drive-through fast food. McDonald's fast food gives you diarrhea. Drive-through Islam gives you diarrhea. And you see the products in the community. You learn Islam, you become more angry. You learn Islam, what do? You fight. You learn Islam, you call everybody a kafir. It gives you diarrhea. The philosophy is wrong. The raw ingredients of the stuff that you're being fed is corrupt. Because it's drive-through. You want instant gratification. Young people always want instant gratification. That's why you like smartphones and your video games. And you need quick what? Decisions and results for all sports games. Every sport you play, you want a result within an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. If they have to play cricket, well, test match, 5 days. How can you play a sport for 5 days? And even then, the result might be a draw. Nobody will win. You understand the psyche? I'm not knocking the American system of sports. It's fun. Whatever you want to do, that's fine. That's your business. What I'm saying is the psyche and the philosophy of learning Islam is that it's a process. You need these 4 core subjects under your belt. Understanding the Quran, verse for verse, with the correct aqidah. Then understanding the hadith through the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, which is why you have hadith and fiqh together. We don't study hadith outside of the fiqh. Very important for you. Why do we study fiqh if there's hadith? Because the fiqh gives you the sunnah. What does the fiqh give you? The sunnah. So every hadith did not make it to the level of the sunnah. But every sunnah is better than the level of every hadith. You understand? Be careful. When people throw hadith at you, and they just hadith of Prophet ﷺ, therefore you must follow the hadith. We say we are not required to follow the hadith, we are required to follow what? Which nas tells you you must follow the hadith? And which nas tells you must follow the sunnah? Every nas. Alaykum bi sunnati, alaykum bi hadithi. What is it? Sunnah or hadith? Sunnah. We are required to do what? Follow which? The sunnah. That is why we are people of the sunnah wal jama'ah. We are ahlul sunnah wal jama'ah. Why? We follow the sunnah, not the hadith. Which hadith? The hadith that didn't make it to the level of a sunnah. What is now an example where you have a sahih hadith but you don't follow it. It is crazy. Why? Because you've been grown up to believe. Follow the hadith. Quran hadith, Quran hadith. We've never said that. We've always said Quran Sunnah. The term makes a difference. What is the example? That there is a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, but it never reached the level of a Sunnah. There are so many. Everything in Hanafi fiqh is based on this. And everything that you read in Muwatta, Imam Malik will say. The Imam Malik will narrate a hadith in his Muwatta. His own book, he narrates a hadith. And then afterwards he says, La na'amalu alayh. He says himself, what did he say? We don't practice. Who? Imam Malik, who took his knowledge from Nafi' and Zuhri, as the book is saying. There he's saying, I'm narrating this hadith, I'm narrating the hadith with my sanad back to the Prophet ﷺ. Then I'm commenting in the very next sentence, La na'amalu alayh. We don't practice this hadith. Crazy one. Can you say this in the USA today? Not in Jersey. Maybe in Chicago. Alhamdulillah, we're fortified in Chicago. You don't mess with the Hanafis in Chicago. There's a fortress of Hanafi. Hanafiism. I'm just kidding. But anyway, what I'm saying is that there's a hadith, for example, very simple hadith. Very straightforward, that the Prophet, one Sahabi narrates, the Prophet, he saw the Prophet go outside, and he answered the call of nature, but he was standing, he was not sitting. It's Sahih hadith. The sanad is Sahih. Every muhaddith agrees, the sanad is Sahih. But this hadith of answering the call of nature, standing, never assumed the level of a sunnah. So what does Aisha say? Aisha says, whoever tells you the Prophet ﷺ stood while answering the call of nature, don't believe him. He always sat. Now what is she saying? That the other Sahaba is lying? You understand the point? If this hadith is Sahih, and Aisha's statement is both Sahih, so which one is what? So the Ulama say it's very easy. When there was a need, an exception to the rule, where the urine would come back to the Prophet ﷺ's clothing or body, he did this once in his life, so it never became a practice sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. So this hadith is Sahih, and Aisha's statement that it was never his sunnah is also Sahih, and that's how you deal with Sahih hadith. Another example. In Sahih Muslim, when you read Sahih Muslim, you'll be amazed. MashaAllah. We don't have time to get into that. It would be too more technical for most of you. One hadith, Imam Muslim narrates from a tabi'i, where he says that if you want to do qurbani and you're not in Hajj, then from the first of Dhul Hajj, you must not trim your nails. You've heard this? I'm sure you've heard it somewhere, or some of you might have heard it. Don't trim your nails until you do your qurbani for 10 days, or 11 days, or 12 days. This is in Sahih Muslim. Right? Now, what do? You say, read the hadith that Imam Muslim brings right next to it. The very next hadith. In the very next hadith, Imam Muslim says that the same tabi'i who narrates this hadith says, we no longer practice this. We no longer practice. That's why you don't practice. But the hadith is sahih. So, when you want to study hadith, you must study what with it? Fiqh. So the fiqh gives you the sunnah, and the hadith gives you the hadith. And this is your core subject. Quran, Aqidah, Hadith, and Fiqh. When you have studied this thoroughly for 7 years, now we will say you have the ability and the tools with which you can study Islam and then bring solutions for the Ummah and address the issues of the Ummah. even then you still have to continue studying. This is what it means to be an alim of deen. An alim of deen must be thorough in his Islamic studies. Afterwards, there are specializations. Like you become an expert in hadith studies. You become an expert in Quran studies. You become an expert in theology, aqidah studies. You become an expert in the language, the Arabic language. You become an expert in other fields related to Islam. That is your PhD level of studying. So in Islamic history, you'll find many people had specializations, and you will find few people who were good at everything, polymaths, like Shah Abdul Aziz, right? And other great giants in the Muslim Ummah, where they were giants in every field, like Shah Waliullah and Anwar Shah Kashmiri and Maulana Shaykh Ali Thani, these great giants of the Dehlawi and Deobandi tradition. And then you have Imam Razi, and you have Imam Ghazali, and you have people from the time of Bukhari and so on. And before that, you had the Mujtahidun, the four great Imams, whose fiqh survived. Why do we say follow only four? Because it's only four whose fiqh is documented. It's only four whose fiqh has survived the test of time. Everybody else's fiqh faded away. Does Imam Bukhari have a madhab? Where? Where is it written? Who wrote Imam Bukhari's madhab? Nowhere. It's Sahih. How many hadith are in Sahih? How many? 7,000, 8,000. At the most. And what does he say? He says that I transmitted these 8,000, whatever number it is, from a collection of 200,000. How many? 200,000 hadith, which he knew, he memorized. The Hafiz of the Quran is one who knows every word and letter of the Quran. Is that right? Who is the Hafiz of Hadith? Hafiz of Hadith is someone who has memorized with the sanad 100,000 hadith. How many? 100,000. You want to be that? Inshallah. It's possible. We have some shuyukh in the world who have memorized 100,000 and more hadith with the sanad. It's doable. But then make sure you study the fiqh with it. Right? Don't go all hadith on us. I memorized 100,000 hadith, therefore you must follow the fiqh. Read the hadith and follow the fiqh. You'll be safe, inshallah. Right. So now, what I say that you have these scholars who were giants, and Imam Bukhari was a giant scholar, but his madhab did not survive. None of his students recorded his madhab, documented his madhab, so there's no way to say this is Imam Bukhari's madhab on this issue. Right. Whose madhab do we have access to? Four. And those are the four that we follow. Why? Because they will then encompass all the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. That's why for logistical and practical purposes, we say that we only have access to four. And these four great imams, they were polymaths. They're polymaths. They had their own abilities, which you can't even speak of today. One of the prerequisites for ijtihad, Suyuti understand, is that the mujtahid, a mujtahid who has expert knowledge in every Islamic science, is that he must also know how to interpret dreams. Who? The mujtahid. Does that ever come into your conversation with mujtahid? He knows this hadith of Bukhari, he's a mujtahid. You say that's a given. That's a no-brainer. the sharaif, the prerequisites for you to be a mujtahid is that you must be able to read what happens in the other world. What's the other world? The world of the dreams. Is that a sunnah? Is that a sunnah? The Prophet ﷺ would on many occasions sit after Fajr and do what? Ask the Sahaba if they had any dream. And if they had a dream, he would interpret the dream. And if they didn't have a dream, he would say, I had this dream. And he would interpret the dream. On an occasion, Abu Bakr would say, Ya Rasulullah, please allow me to interpret this dream. So this is sunnah. Reoccurring basis. So where's that knowledge? Meaning there are just so many tools you need in order to become the greatest scholar in Islam like Abu Hanifa, Malik and Shafi and Hanbal. It is not that all of a sudden you have access to, well, what's it called? Your programs on the computer. क्या है वो? Huh? No, no, not Sheikh Google. No, Shamil. You have this Shamil. Now we have access to every book under the sun. So we are the mujtahid. So you're not the mujtahid. Is your dua accepted? Is the mujtahid's dua accepted? That they are people of spirituality, they are people of ruhaniyah, they engage themselves in ibadah as they engage themselves in ilm. They did not mess with their taqwa. If anything was doubtful, they didn't question whether it's halal or haram, they just stayed away from it. And now you're doing ijtihad so that everything haram becomes halal. So where's your ijtihad? You understand what I'm saying? So now, you say that who is an alim? Who is an alim is someone who has the ability to study Islam after they've studied the prerequisites, and that takes 7-8 years. In these 4 core content subjects. This is our definition, the Deobandi definition of who is an alim. If you have another definition, that's fine. And all of these madaris that Maulana mentioned in North Africa, Azhar, they have the same condition. They won't allow you to graduate from Azhar if you don't have these prerequisites under your belt. Because then you will be speaking on behalf of the Sharia, you'll be speaking on behalf of the Prophet ﷺ, and that's an enormous responsibility. So when you say this is what Islam wants from you, this is what the Prophet ﷺ wants from you, this is the intent of God, intent of Allah in your life, that's a huge responsibility. How can you carry that responsibility if you don't know how to carry the knowledge of the Quran, the Sunnah, Hadith, Fiqh, and Aqidah? Just as if you don't know American law, if you don't know New Jersey law, then you should not be giving people free advice as a pseudo lawyer and saying, I think the law means this. You don't do that. You shouldn't be giving free advice to people about their health and their medication just because something worked for you. That I think this prescription will work for you because it worked for me. You're going to kill somebody. Likewise, you read in one hadith and then all of a sudden you dispense a hadith to everybody because I think this hadith makes sense and you should act upon it. You are endangering their salvation. You're endangering their akhirah. You want to take on that responsibility? I hope not. So, when we say we want you to study, that's what we mean. Study from the bottom up, not from the top down. And with this, inshallah, we will conclude. If you have any comments, suggestions, or questions, we are here, hopefully, to address. Yes. In the one book, it was at least 6 months. Questions from the back. Yes, in the back. Well, the intimidation is good, so that you stay on the ground. But it's no different from if somebody after high school wants to become a doctor, he'll never be intimidated, right? Or JD, why would he be intimidated? You're going to go all the way. That's all we're saying, is that go all the way. Spend 7 years, 8 years in learning, studying this, then you'll make it there to a level where you'll be able to appreciate their scholarship. You will always be intimidated because that's the way giants are. Giants will intimidate you. Right? So what I'm saying is that you don't have to be intimidated here at this level. You just need to make sure that that is what you want to do. If that's your focus in life, then go for it. Bismillah. This country is based on people who are aggressive, not passive. And there are many of you, I'm sure that you'll make it there, bismillah. And then I'm sure many others will say, okay, I can't make it, but I can help others make it. And that's how you support community support. But it is, you're right, it is daunting because the first time you've heard this. When we heard this, when we were in Madrasa, it wasn't daunting. We're here for that. Right. So when you go to med school and they tell you, or pre-med, that it's going to take you X number of years to become a cardiologist, is what, 12 years. It's daunting, but are you going to say, I'm not interested anymore? What are you going to say? I would assume you say, okay, I'll meet the challenge. Right. So Muslims who came to this country under the pretext of education, they've gone all the way, which is a credit to them. There's no doubt in that. But they should then transfer the same theory, philosophy, psyche, approach, and attitude to Islamic studies. That they shouldn't expect people to become an alim in 1 year, or 2 years, or 4 years. That's outrageous. That is stupid. You can't expect that in 4 years. You need to spend 10,000 hours of quality time before you can say you can master anything. 10,000 hours. Right? That's a scientific fact. If you can spend that much time, then yes, you'll be on your way. So, as much as it might frighten you that Abu Hanifa spent 18 years, it might frighten you that you have spent 8 years. I don't think you should be giving up. Go all the way. We're still learning. As we're sitting here, you can ask Maulana and everybody here, we are still learning. We haven't stopped. We still discuss and we still study and we still have workshops and seminars for ourselves and we still have a shuyukh, our Shaykh who's coming, Maulana Arshad. We will sit with him and learn. Maulana Sayyid Parampuri who comes, we sit with him and learn. So we keep on learning. That's the process. And what I'm suggesting and emphasizing is don't give up on the process. The process is lifelong with any field. There's one more question. A good alim, a good alim takes you 15 years after you graduate, inshallah. May Allah make you one of them. Yes. Unrelated? Then you have to ask Mufti. Oh, that's good. We may try and answer. If it's fiqh, you go to Mufti. Ulul Azm min al-Rusul. The question on Ulul Azm, who are the Ulul Azm, is mentioned in Surah Al-Ahzab. That we took a very heavy covenant from five. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Nuh alayhi salam, Musa, Isa, Ibrahim. Those five are mentioned in Surah Al-Ahzab. But they will be on the top of the list, right? They'll be on top. There's no one higher than those five, because those five were selected for this covenant, this mithaq. There might be others like Dawood alayhi salam or Ulul Azm min al-Rusul. There are people of Azm. So there's no fixed number. And as you know, we don't like fixed numbers. Yeah. But these five definitely. If they are qati, and others may be included, if you want, by extension. Yes. And I don't have time for that. That's not a drive-through question, brother. You come and study for 1 year with me, I'll teach you what those 18 subjects are first. Then you can excel. Shah Abdul Aziz, rahimahullah, used to say that for an alim to become an alim of hadith, he needs to study 36 books of hadith. How many? Do you know 36 books? Do you know the names of 36 books, period? Never mind hadith books. No. That's what he used to say. And that wasn't too long ago, it was only 150 years ago. Today is Bukhari, Muslim. One hadith of Bukhari or Muslim, you're fine. He said, in order to become a master, a student, not a master, a student of hadith, you must study 36 books of hadith. Then you can say, now you are studying hadith. The standard has to be high. When do you become a chief justice in this country? When you're 20 or when you're 60? Plus 60 plus. Right? So chief justice of this secular society. We live in the USA. And when you become someone who's known as an alim of deen in the community, when you're older, when you've gone through the mill, you study, you teach, you study, you teach, you study, you teach. So that's one thing. When do you become the Surgeon General of this country? The chief surgeon. When you're a genius in high school? No. When you've gone through the mill of practicing your medicine in society, in the community, that's the practice. That you achieve these goals and these milestones at the top of the ladder. So if you want to go to the top of the ladder, you're going to have to wait and continue your studies. But it starts here with your Darul Hidayah, with these retreats and other places.
Desire to get it done overseas,